Imagine a city cloaked in fog and fear. The year is 1888, and in the sprawling, impoverished district of Whitechapel in London, a shadow is beginning to lengthen. The flickering gas lamps cast long, dancing silhouettes down narrow, cobblestone alleyways. But among these shadows, a real monster lurks. A killer who would stalk the dark, labyrinthine streets, leaving a trail of terror in his wake, and was never caught. This is the story of the world's most infamous unsolved mystery, the hunt for Jack the Ripper. The autumn of 1888, known as the Autumn of Terror, was a season that would be forever etched into the annals of crime history. It began in the early morning hours of August 31st, when the body of a woman named Marion Nichols was discovered. The brutality of her murder shocked even the most hardened residents of London's East End. But this was only the beginning. Just over a week later, on September 8th, Annie Chapman was found, her injuries even more horrific. A wave of panic began to grip the city. The police, struggling with limited forensic technology, were completely baffled. The killer was audacious, striking in the dead of night, often in public or semi-public places, yet melting away like a phantom before anyone could see him. He targeted vulnerable women in the Whitechapel area, creating an atmosphere of intense paranoia. The newspapers, with their sensational headlines, fueled the public's terror and fascination. They gave the killer a name that would become legendary. Then, on September 30th, the killer escalated his reign of terror in what became known as the double event. Within a single hour, 2 women, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, were murdered. The brazenness was astonishing. Catherine Eddowes' body, in particular, showed a horrifying level of mutilation, suggesting the killer had a terrifying degree of anatomical knowledge. It was after this night that the legend truly took shape. A letter, mockingly addressed from hell, and accompanied by a piece of a human kidney, was sent to the head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. Another letter, signed with a chilling flourish, had already arrived. Jack the Ripper. Whether these letters were genuinely from the killer or a cruel hoax remains a subject of intense debate. But the name stuck. Jack the Ripper was no longer just a murderer. He was a boogeyman, a specter haunting the collective nightmare of an entire nation. The police force, including detectives from the newly formed Criminal Investigation Department at Scotland Yard, launched one of the largest manhunts in British history. They interviewed thousands of people, investigated hundreds of suspects, and followed countless dead-end leads. Yet the Ripper remained elusive, always one step ahead. The final canonical victim, as she's known by researchers, was Mary Jane Kelly. Her murder on November 9th was the most gruesome of all. She was killed indoors, in her own small room on Miller's Court, allowing the murderer ample time to carry out his most horrific acts. The scene that greeted the police was so ghastly that seasoned officers were visibly shaken. After the horror of Mary Jane Kelly's death, the murders abruptly stopped. Just as suddenly as he had appeared, Jack the Ripper vanished, leaving behind a city traumatized and the police force humiliated. So, who was he? This is the question that has haunted historians, detectives, and armchair sleuths for over a century. The theories are as numerous and varied as the streets of Whitechapel itself. One of the most enduring theories points to a man with medical training. The precise and surgical nature of the mutilations led many to suspect a doctor or a surgeon. Names like Sir William Gall, the physician to Queen Victoria, have been floated. The idea was that such a person would have the skill to perform the dissections, and the social standing to move about unnoticed, perhaps even with blood on his clothes, without arousing suspicion. Another popular and sensational theory implicates a member of the royal family. Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence and grandson of Queen Victoria, has often been named as a suspect. Proponents of this theory suggest a grand conspiracy to cover up the prince's dark deeds. However, most historians have largely debunked this, citing alibis and a lack of credible evidence. It remains a fascinating, if unlikely, thread in the tapestry of the Ripper legend. Perhaps the answer is more mundane. Could Jack the Ripper have been a local tradesman? A butcher, a slaughterman, or even a fishmonger, someone accustomed to using a knife and being covered in blood as part of their daily work. This would explain his ability to navigate the back alleys of Whitechapel with ease and to blend in with the local population. Suspects like Severin Klosowski, also known as George Chapman, a Polish immigrant who was later convicted and executed for poisoning 3 of his wives, have been seriously considered. Even the famous detective Frederick Aberline, who led the investigation, reportedly favored Chapman as a prime suspect after his conviction. Then there are other intriguing figures, like Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher whose body was found in the River Thames shortly after the last murder. His own family suspected he might have been the killer. Or Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish immigrant who worked as a hairdresser in Whitechapel and suffered from severe mental illness. He was a favored suspect of Chief Constable Sir Melville Macnaghten, who wrote about him in private notes years later. In recent times, DNA analysis of a shawl supposedly found near one of the victims, Catherine Eddowes, pointed towards Kosminski, but the validity of this evidence is still fiercely debated by experts. The mystery is not just about who the killer was, but also why he stopped. Did he die? Was he imprisoned for another crime? Did he leave the country? Or did he simply satisfy his dark urges and melt back into society, living out the rest of his life as an anonymous face in the crowd? Each possibility is as chilling as the last. Over 130 years later, the files on the Whitechapel murders remain open. Jack the Ripper's true identity remains one of history's most profound and chilling mysteries. The 5 canonical victims, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were real women whose lives were brutally cut short. Their stories are often lost in the shadow of their killer's legend. But in remembering them, we remember the terror that gripped a city and the enduring power of a mystery that, to this day, has never been solved. The name Jack the Ripper continues to echo from the foggy past, a permanent ghost in the machine of modern crime. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's greatest unsolved cases. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the mysterious and the unknown. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Until next time, stay curious.